Okay, so I'll start off by just saying I absolutely love the original Lion King. It is second only, I think, to Dumbo among all of Disney's animated films, CGI or hand-drawn animation. I actually re-watched it just last night to prepare myself for watching this remake, to just compare it, just see how similar it was exactly. Early on, I'm sort of thinking to myself, is this really just going to be a shot-for-shot remake? No. They cannot possibly just go through the entire film and just recreate everything in, supposed live-action form. But as the film kept sort of going on, I thought to myself, well, they actually are. They are going to do that. They're going to cut out a few scenes here that seem sort of questionable, but for the most part, they actually are just going to, they're going to shorten a few things, which is weird because it's actually half an hour longer than the original film. Pretty much everything in terms of shots and dialogue is going to be pretty much the same. I'll talk just quickly about some of the things I liked in this film. Seth Rogen is fantastic as Pumbaa. John Oliver does a pretty good job as Zazu. I thought I didn't think he was quite as good as Rowan Atkinson, but I thought he did a pretty good job. I got a few laughs out of him. I think visually it does look very realistic. They look like real lions. All the aesthetics of the technical CGI of everything. That it all does sort of look real. I mean, I get what people are saying when they say it's not live action because it's all CGI, but it's all made to look like live action. It looks real, except for the fact that it has talking lions in it. Yeah, I get what people are saying when they say it's not live action, but at the same time, I get why you would call it live action, because it does definitely look live action. It's a stunning film to look at, as the original film was. In terms of the sort of shot-for-shot recreation of everything, they do a pretty good job for the most part. The songs I really enjoyed. They obviously, a lot of the changes that they make visually make sense to me, because there's, like, for example, the Can't Wait to Be King sequence. You can't really do that in a sort of realistic kind of environment, really. The kind of visuals that they have during that song. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be a dream or a fantasy sort of sequence that just is a figment of Simba and Naala's imagination. So it is just a sort of more realistic take on what actually probably really happened during that sequence. The character designs are all decent enough. I mean, they all look like real animals. I'm tempted to get into a negative about that as well, though. But no, I've got to focus on the positive. Yeah, already sort of struggling to come up with any. Yeah, they definitely recaptured sort of a lot of the atmosphere and the feel and the nostalgia that you definitely got from the original film. It's so obviously not done as well and not nearly as emotionally interesting with it being in live action form. So yeah, I should probably just start laying into this. The first thing. Circle of Life, that is literally shot for shot remade. The sunset shot is slightly different, and I think there's a couple of shots that they left out actually. But for the most part, it's literally shot for shot. And I kind of figured that they were going to do that with Circle of Life because it's such an iconic sequence. And I thought that would at least have a decent amount of an impact because there's no dialogue in that scene. But then you have Zazu flying in and that amazing shot from the original. And in the original, he bows to greet Mufasa, and Mufasa just sort of looks down at him and goes, sort of smiles and nods at him. In this version, he just goes, that's it, no emotion at all. And I'm like, fucking hell, this is going to blow. Yes, like I'm not going to feel any kind of emotional connection to these characters at all, because, they just look like real lions. And that holds true. Scar, I think, is the one exception. I did definitely feel an emotional connection with Scar because they made a real effort to make him look sort of dirty and have the scar across his eye and look quite sort of evil, really. He does definitely look like a different lion. Mufasa and adult Simba, to me, look like the same lion, which is amazing because they look so different in the animated film. But in this, they look like the same lion to me. But of course, they don't have any scenes together because Mufasa's already dead by the time Simba becomes an adult, so that's sort of not so much of an issue, but definitely Sarabi and Naaaaa, when Naala's an adult, they look the same as well. I had a hard time distinguishing between the two of them at the end of the film, actually. On the subject, actually, of Sarabi and Naalaaa, they do actually try to expand their roles a little bit. I don't know if maybe there were some accusations about the original film being sexist because Sarabi and Naalaaa are kind of downplayed a little bit more in comparison to their partners. Maybe I'm not familiar with that as a complaint. It's sort of a guess I'm making based on the fact that they try to expand their roles a little bit. One other noticeable change is Scar doesn't know the hyenas before the events of the film. He sort of goes to them during the Be Prepared part and just says, hey, you want to team up and overthrow the king and whatever. And they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's an interesting addition. I don't think it really adds much to the narrative in any kind of way. Be Prepared is shortened considerably. Visually, again, the visuals in the animated film wouldn't really have made sense in a live action film, but they also shortened the song for some reason. The hyenas, actually, I don't think I got a single laugh out of them. They were like one of the funniest things about the original film, and I don't think they made me laugh once during this film. There's a lot of funny lines from them that are cut out. I don't think Ed is in it at all. The sequence where they're chasing after Simba when he has to flee the Pride Lands, that's changed in a way that I did not understand why they had to change it, or why they needed to change it. And Pumbaa, even though Seth Rogen does a great job with his voice to look at, he's just a warthog. There's like no connection to him at all. It's like I'm just watching a warthog while Seth Rogen's voice is playing over the top of it. That's all it is. But on the subject of Timon and Pumbaa, again, there's a little bit more sort of weight to behind their philosophy of, not caring about anything and just focusing on the here and now. There's a little thing that they say where they say like, it's not the circle of life, it's like the line of life. You're just going to die at the end. Sort of. It's kind of weird though that they expand on their philosophy, even though the whole final point of the film is that philosophy is wrong. But I think maybe they're trying to better justify their reason for helping Simba at the end. Maybe again. Couple of comedic scenes involving Timon and Pumbaa are left out as well. The other thing I really noticed that was very strange to me that they left out is the whole learn from the past thing that Rafiki teaches Simba. It's not in there. The sort of iconic scene of him seeing his father in the clouds is there, but then they immediately just sort of move on to the next scene after that. Very strange change, I thought. The Lion Sleeps Tonight actually is expanded a little bit in this film. It's sort of played up as a new song almost. It's like a whole sort of elaborate song sequence, which was kind of nice, made for quite a nice moment. It doesn't really add anything to the experience of the film, but it was a nice little sort of moment, I suppose. And then there's other sort of details that are important to the plot that just don't come across nearly as effectively. There's nothing really wrong with them. If you watch this film in a vacuum, it's a perfectly sort of adequate kind of film because, it's The Lion King. But there are things that they adapt and the little changes they make they're just not as good. The way Simba and Nala reunite, for example, is a little bit different and it just doesn't have the same impact and it just doesn't feel the same. Can You Feel the Love Tonight? I was very interested to see if they would make any kind of real change to that because a lot of people have sort of debated as to whether or not that sort of whole love story feels a little bit rushed. I've always felt that, since The Lion King isn't really about the love story, that's kind of a subplot. You only have a 90-minute film to begin with, so you kind of have to rush it a little bit. Also, I think, even though in film time it probably seems a bit rushed, it doesn't cover much time, I think in-universe sort of time, that whole sequence of them reuniting, falling in love, and then going back to the Pride Lands, that's probably about 2 or 3 weeks that covers, even though in the film it's like 5 minutes. So I was interested with this film being nearly 2 hours, it's an extra half hour they've got, whether or not they would expand on that a little bit. If anything, it feels more rushed. The main thing that I sort of knew going in was going to be a real problem was just these lions, these realistic-looking lions. I was going to really struggle to have any kind of emotional connection to them because there was just going to be no facial expressions on them at all. Very, very sort of bland, a lot of the scenes. I was trying to sort of get behind some of the changes that they were making and thinking to myself, well, that's kind of interesting. But for the most part, I was just sort of thinking to myself, it's not better though, is it? It's just different. And it just sort of left me wondering back in my mind, well, why did they change that? It's kind of weird. I'm constantly thinking to myself, am I really being fair here? Because on the one hand, I'm thinking to myself, oh, it's just a shot-for-shot remake. They're doing everything exactly the same. How pointless. And then when they change things, I'm like, well, why did they change that? It's like, is there no pleasing me almost? Am I annoyed that they didn't change things, but I'm also annoyed that they did change things? It's like the film can't win. So, but I've concluded really that, making this film in the first place is kind of pointless, but, I was willing to just sort of accept, okay, let's see what they've actually got. You're making the Lion King remake. I don't think there's really much point to doing that, especially with realistic-looking lions. If you're going to remake the Lion King, do it in some kind of form of animation, maybe CGI. I suppose technically this is CGI, but, animated-looking CGI, like you have in, like, Tangled. So I was willing to accept that. And then I was willing to sort of say, okay, well, if you're going to do that, improve on things, make things better in some kind of way. For the most part, they don't try to do that. They just keep things the same. And when they do change things, it's not for the better. The voice cast is all really good, with the possible exception of James Earl Jones, the one actor that is reprising his role from the original. I actually don't think James Earl Jones was very good in this. There's the scene where he is telling Simba off for exiting the Pride Lands, going beyond the boundaries. But in the original, he's just sort of like, Simba, I am very disappointed. You deliberately disobeyed me. And what's worse, you put Naaaaa in danger. Real emotion behind the line. He's very angry, and also he's looking at Simba when he's saying that. In this version, it's, Simba, I'm very disappointed. You deliberately disobeyed me, and what's worse, you put Naaaaa in danger. Wow, it's like no emotion behind it at all. Like, what are you doing, James? That was so emotional, that line in the original. It's the same actor, and he's got no emotion behind the same line. But yeah, also that scene in particular, this obviously isn't James Earl Jones' fault, or, the actor that did young Simba, I don't know his name. This isn't their fault. While they're exchanging lines during that scene, they're not looking at each other, they're looking up at the sky. Why change that? What's the point? You're just obviously showing far less of an emotional connection between the characters if you do that. What they didn't change annoyed me, because you're basically just making the same film again with CGI and not nearly as much emotion visually. And what they did change wasn't really for the better. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There were maybe a couple of changes in regards to the character of Naaaaa, and maybe one additional scene during Scar's reign. Those were quite welcome and additional changes, I thought. Other than that, I can't think of any small changes that they made that I thought were for the better. So overall, if you ignore the original film, this is a decent enough film, I suppose. But really, for the most part, the only things that are good about this were in the original. Yeah, I would say just watch the original, to be honest. I wouldn't say it's exactly a bad film, it's just not worth seeing over the original. Okay, that's that, guys. See ya.